Hi, welcome back. I'm here with Shiran Yaroslavsky. She's the CEO and founder of Cassiopeia. Shiran, how you doing?
Good, thank you, Al. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I mean, you have participated in PAFOW conferences in the past, and I've been taken aback each time that you've shared your insights and ideas. And given that you're an immigrant here in the States, and given that you're an expert in remote work and workplace experience, I just am really, again, taken by the virtuous perspective that you have. So if you would, for our audience, introduce yourself and a little bit about Cassiopeia.
Sure, would love to. I'm Shiran, I'm the CEO of Cassiopea, and we empower remote leaders with actionable insights to improve collaboration, belonging, and mental health. Our technology knows how to analyze communication patterns, so no text, but only the patterns, and provide insights about team behavior. So this is what we do. I'm originally from Israel. I moved to the Bay Area 7 months ago already. Not the best time to relocate, I must admit. Before Cassiopea, my background is in product management. I led product teams in large companies, small companies, a very data-driven product. And I'm also a lawyer by training, so I hold bachelor and master degree in law.
So just been relaxing. So no, I mean, you're obviously very accomplished, and you've have other accolades, which we'll share later and as we promote this this podcast. But what I want to get into right now in our limited time is this fact that we're in this remote work environment, obviously with COVID, and the dynamics amongst people has shifted. I mean, we're as human beings, we're wired to connect, right? And we're not able to do that in this instance, not like we've become accustomed. And you have looked at this data that has been generated through activity to shed insights on, what's working and what can be done to keep teams together and be more cohesive and more productive and so forth. Can you speak to that? I mean, what data are you looking at, and what's the core value proposition, and actually, taking a look at that data and taking action on it?
Yeah, definitely. I would love to share that. So we are looking on several levels of the team culture and dynamics. So I think the first level is the collaboration. We are looking at who's collaborating with who, the communication within the company. So for example, I can share that in many cases when companies is shifting to remote work, collaboration within the team affected, but also between teams. So it's really important to have a look on that. A second level is new employees. So onboarding new employees remotely is pretty challenging. I don't know, Al, if you've done that in the past, but there is a new set of challenges for new employees these days. So also looking into that. Workday balance. So what we see, and it's really connected also to meeting efficiency as well. What we saw is that when companies are shifting to remote work, but also companies that used to work remotely, they have their difficulty to find the right balance during their day. So a lot of companies, when they shifted these days to remote work, they try to just close this gap with over communication, which is really important, and this is great. But also what we saw is that in many cases, just employees experienced too many meetings, too many calls. They didn't have any time left to actually work on their personal tasks. So how do you find this balance, in doing your workday? So this is something we also help leaders find. Work-life balance is also very important. Make sure while we're working remotely that people just don't experience too much work overload, that they manage to limit their workday. So this is something we also help a lot with leaders these days.
I get so excited when I hear anyone, whether it be a business leader or an individual or someone such as yourself who provides services to shed light on this, because it's so important. And in my view, having been in this field for a number of years, it's been a blind spot, this notion of capacity, that we're all limited by time, and that people are, to your point, there was this in many cases, an over communication, an overcompensation to give workers, team members information. And that just was overwhelming is what I'm hearing. And in turn, how then do you calibrate, on an individual level, what is the appropriate workload? What is the appropriate communication rhythm? And if I heard you correctly, that's what you help think through and strategize around. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I can share, for example, a few insights that we provide is, for example, if there is a significant increase in meeting time for certain teams. So by highlighting to this, these insights for managers, they can, talk to the team and make sure, how they feel about it. If they feel they have too many meetings, and if so, what kind of meetings are redundant. So we helping leaders to be more intentional about it, helping them to find the right balance for their team. So this is just one example, but we have a lot of insights around team meeting and team efficiency and this balance of creating the right balance for the employee's workday.
So with that in mind, what data are you bringing to the fore to shed light on what's appropriate at the end of the day? I mean, in terms of meeting length, meeting frequency, number of meetings per day. I mean, what data are you looking at?
Yeah, so we analyze the calendar, again, no content at all, nothing like that. But we are looking on the frequency of meetings. So for example, the one-on-one meetings, managers with their employees, for example. And I can share that in our product, for example, users can also decide on goals. So for example, if you as a manager want to set a goal to have one-on-one conversation with your direct employee every 7 days, we will help you to do that. So if we look at, for example, your employee, John, you haven't spoken to him, for 2 weeks now, we will highlight that and help you to really meet your goals. So this is one example. So we are looking on specifically one-on-one or team meetings, and also how frequent it is and what time is it during the day. Also, we consider different time zones. So there's a bunch of factors we take into account. And yeah, we're basically just helping leaders to be more minded about their communication and, how they create the best collaboration within the team.
And so just to be clear, you offer a product and a service. So do you offer coaching services, or is this all automated? And what does that look like in terms of your actual solution that you provide?
Yeah, so what we do, we integrate into the APIs of the video platform. Usually it's Zoom, but also it can be WebEx or BlueJeans. So the email, calendar, and chat, usually it's Slack. And what we do, we just take this metadata and provide a weekly email reports to managers with the most actionable insights for this week. And within the report that we provide, so you can find the relevant insights, but also relevant recommendations. And we work with the leading experts in the field of organizational development, remote work, to provide these actionable insights. So it's all about, finding the signals and also provide the right recommendation translated to the right recommendations for leaders. So yeah, this is how it works.
And so when you say leaders, I imagine it's organizational leaders, but it's also team leaders. Is that right?
Yeah, so I can share that today we work mostly with leaders in R&D, a lot of VP engineering or VP product, but also with people leaders, also with the people from HR professionals as well. So this is the main, I think, personas that we see these days.
Got it. And so if I am going through a strategy around return to workplace, and here we are, June 26th, return to workplace might be an ebb and flow, given that we have another spike happening here in the United States, and specifically, here in California. So as this ebb and flows happen, the data that we're gathering, that you're gathering, is going to help organizations formulate appropriate ways forward. Is that a fair way to position your solution?
So definitely we help also organization to companies that either used to work remotely but just want to do it, to improve collaboration. There's always I love working with leaders that have the curiosity and always the need to improve. So we have this kind of organization as well, just fully remote companies that just used to work remotely and just want to do it better. But we also have a lot of companies that just shifted to remote work. And I'm just amazed by how many, we're working mostly with tech companies. So how many tech companies just decided to actually give up their, their rent agreement and rent fees and just go fully remote, or just decide about hybrid models. So we definitely help also these kind of companies also to assess and to assess their culture and make sure, we are on the right track. So if we're doing such a major change in our culture, decide on a different workplace model, make sure, to assess how it actually affects our culture and our way of work, basically.
What would you say to those leaders who aren't using this type of data and this type of insight? I mean, what would you say to them?
Good question. I think, on a personal level, I think that the shift to remote work just also shift a lot of insights and power in using people analytics information and insights. And I think for leaders that really want to be a better listeners for their employees and teams, they need to use this information, of course, in a very ethical and the right way, but use it in order to be a better listener, to provide better work experience for their employees, to also spot difficulties in time. So I think it will be a must for leaders that want to lead remotely.
Yeah, unbiasedly, I 100% agree with you. You are very tactful and nice in the way you position that. I would go so far as to say, it's like, what are you doing? I mean, it's almost bordering on irresponsible with not truly understanding how people are spending their time day to day and some of the risk areas. So, as you move forward, and you just touched on it, there is a bit of Big Brother-ish, it can get spooky. Obviously, you're a lawyer by trade. For those who have issues or potential issues with the ethics or legality of what you're doing, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, so first of all, we are GDPR compliant. We are very, very careful and secure in everything we do. I must say that I think it's all about how you're using information and what we do. So first of all, we are not displaying any insights about individuals that, for example, if you won't be able to see, if you have two employees, John and Dan, you won't be able to see how frequent they are talking to each other. It's not something we provide. We provide insights on a team level or a subgroup level, like new employees or parents, things like that, because we want people to feel comfortable using the platform. So it's all about how you're using insights in a way that will make people feel comfortable and for making it for the right reason, right? So if we're using it not to spy on people, but just to improve collaboration, belonging within teams, this is a very good, way to use information and data. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it does, however, take correct me if I'm wrong from your perspective, a concerted approach. So obviously legal has to be involved, IT has to be involved. You mentioned you work with R&D folks, HR would likely be involved. So there's two questions that I want to ask, and I'll take a risk at asking them both at the same time. Of those organizations that are using the insights that you're generating well, do they have a multidisciplinary governance body or steering group that is consuming the insight, in turn taking action? Or is it just, someone from, an operational leader. And the related question is this, is that, how are the leaders actually using this on an ongoing basis? In other words, if there's a solution that makes sense, they're arguably going to have to enlist facilities, they're going to have to enlist IT, they're going to have to enlist others. So if there's not a group approach to commissioning your type of work and in turn taking action, then I see things potentially falling down. So this notion of governance and getting these right people in the room, do you see that, or am I just not thinking about it appropriately?
Yeah, so I must say that also the onboarding process of Cassiopea is pretty short usually, because we are using only metadata. We're not looking into text, nothing, very personal. So usually it's really easy for us. We designed the platform to be very secure. So usually we're going through, security and legal pretty easily, and the onboarding process is very short. And the way leaders use these insights, it's really interesting, because what we chose to do is that part of the onboarding process, a manager can decide on their goals. So for example, if you want to have goals about your new employees, you can set up your goals there. Or if you have goals about, mentoring employees in general, or just meeting deficiencies, so you can set up your own goals, and this is how you will receive just a personalized report for you, for your needs, your goals as a manager. Because we just, from our experience, we just learned that leaders get different priorities and different things that are mattered for them. And this is how we make our insights the most relevant for our users. So this is how it works.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what role does HR play, if at all? And similarly, who's the buyer? Is it HR? Is it operations? Is it the function that is actually going to use it? I mean, who's actually making the decision?
Good question. So I can share that we have companies that the HR is really care about making sure that the culture that we have is on the right track, also while shifting to remote work or some hybrid model as well. And the HR is a really good champion, and they get us on board. And sometimes, they have the right leader, internal leader in mind. For example, that the R&D department or the marketing department will be could really benefit from our tool, and they're a very good champion and buyer. And in other cases, we actually, like managers from R&D, just reaching out to us and tell us, we really care about creating better collaboration and belonging within our team. Also, it's really affect our performance, right? So they can be also just a direct buyer for us. So this is, I would say, it's like split almost half and half, I would say.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me, because and again, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, because this whole notion of worker experience, employee experience, workplace experience is, who owns that? Is it operations? Is it, does HR only influence? And so as we fast forward in time here, what would be your ideal use case from a customer perspective? Would they have a multidisciplinary steering committee that would not only look at your insights, but other insights? Like, in other words, look at location strategy, look at recruitment strategy, look at worker experience. Because, if I'm going to have an office, how am I going to lay out that office? How much office space do I need? And if I understand correctly, the insights that you're generating can actually inform those decisions and the dynamics that would ensue. Am I looking at that right? And again, just to ask the question more pointedly, as we fast forward in time, what would be your ideal future state? And I know it depends, but what would be kind of the ideal model that you would like to see your solution adopted under?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think, as I see it, there is a trend. And I think for your question, who's in charge of the workplace experience? I think we see it shift a bit. So if it used to be only the HR people, the people team responsibility. I think these days we also expect it from our managers as well, our professional managers as well. So if I'm the VP R&D of a company, I'm not just expected to deliver really good code. It's also to really create amazing team, amazing culture as well. And I think in order to do that, so for sure you need some kind of on an organizational level, someone that will have a look on the company culture and workplace experience from a high level view. But in order to do it and really in a good and effective way, in a way that can drive a behavioral change, you also need the tools or the system that will help also to deliver these insights to the actual managers in a very constant way of real time, so people can also learn from these insights on a daily basis and act on them. So I don't believe in this is for sure. There is need to be someone on the organization level that have a look on it, but I think we should also kind of delegate this responsibility also to our direct managers as well.
Right. So I hear that there's an and in there, that there's an organizational kind of potential, steering committee or someone who's, really taking charge of the implementation, understanding that's happening and making sure the legality is taken care of. But it's really a dissemination to the manager level so they can consume the insight and take appropriate action. And that manager, correct me if I'm wrong, might be a team of 10. It could be, somebody who's, doing a whole site location of hundreds of people. Is that right?
Exactly. And this is exactly what we are doing at Cassiopea. So we just help leaders to get the insights they need on a weekly basis, with just to help them to create a better culture, better dynamics. So yeah.
Well, I have a couple more questions that I'd like to cover, and the first one is this, because you have an uncommon eloquence and passion around this topic of worker experience and workplace experience. Why? What's your inspiration, given your background, to say, okay, I'm going to focus on this and deliver something unique to the world? What inspired you to do this?
Yeah, wow. It's a really good question. So I can share, I worked for a few companies, also as a product manager or a product leader, very data-driven product. And also I experienced some, I can say that some not that pleasant workplace experience. And in my view, it's me, but also my partner see it as our mission to use data to really create better workplace experience. So we are very connected to this mission, I can say. Also, I manage remote teams for many years, so I experienced these difficulties, and I think it's also more difficult or more challenging to create amazing work experience while working remotely. There's just a whole new set of challenges. So I think this is, and what we see is that data can really make a difference. Insights can really help leaders to do that. So.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And thank you for sharing, because I can sense your enthusiasm, and I understood that there was something deeper there, which actually brings me into one of the final questions that I want to ask you today. Is that you've said before we started recording here that you're an immigrant, and you actually shared that that you just moved here to the States 7 months ago, and there's certain dynamics that are happening in American society now that are long overdue. Black Lives Matter. There's also been a longstanding movement which is starting to gain traction, derived not maybe derived, but amplified by the Me Too movement, but around gender equity, pay equity, and so forth. So I know, given your values, that these themes are very important to you, and you being there in Oakland, it's been front and center. You've actually seen a lot of this happen. So what are your thoughts and feelings around the dynamics that you're observing as an immigrant here in the United States?
Yeah, it's really, thank you for this question. So yeah, as you mentioned, I live in Oakland, and me and my husband, we love Oakland. It's so diversified. There's a lot of great culture and art, and we just love it, really. I love that inclusion and diversity inclusion is a big part of the city's values. And I relocated to the US 7 months ago, and I must admit that I'm a great supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement, but also I can share that I feel that, to be honest, as an Israeli, I can't really understand how it's like to be a Black person in America. It's just so different. And in the last Black History Month, just before the pandemic, before the COVID-19 outbreak, I attended the Black History event in Auckland in the Kapur Center. And here, I went there to hear more stories and perspective about how it's like to be a Black person in the US. And it was eye-opening. I can share that being an Israeli or a Jewish woman, I got my own challenges, but this is just, a completely different experience. And I think that, in light of the recent event, it just teaches us that we need to be more empathetic. We need to make the extra step, extra effort to understand what the other person is going through and see how we can make things better for people, in our society, but also in the workplace. So this is how I see it.
Well, I mean, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And thank you, gosh, on behalf of, our society, that you made an effort to learn about the Black experience here in America. We need more Americans, doing that. It cannot be ignored anymore. It's been ignored too long. And I'll also throw in the Native American experience as well. It is something that, it comes, it's very evident in how you're coming across it. You're very curious about people's experience day to day. So it's unsurprising that you're talking about empathy and the need to understand. And having lived in Berkeley and Oakland as well, I am too a huge fan. In fact, I miss those attributes, of those towns, of those cities. So yeah, thank you for sharing. So as we start to wrap up, any closing comments, tidbits of advice that you might want to share?
Yeah, so I would say that, as we discussed here, as we shift to remote work or some kind of new workplace models, just be very minded about how it affects our culture and what kind of tools and insights we need to make sure we're on the right track. So I think I will end with this message. I think it's the most important one for today.
Well, Shiran, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for doing what you do, and look forward to seeing you in person. Hopefully not too long, we're not too far away. So hopefully things will improve and we'll be able to do something live in person. And but until then, you be well, and all the best to you and your team there at Cassiopea.
Thank you. Thank you so much, El. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.